Massive stone circles stand silent across every continent on Earth. These prehistoric monuments form a mysterious global network, a puzzle scattered from Britain to Senegal. For centuries, their true purpose has been one of history's greatest enigmas. By the end of this journey, you will understand the hidden language connecting these ancient sites and the profound human story they tell. We will uncover why cultures separated by oceans built such similar structures and what secrets of the cosmos they were designed to capture. Were they ancient calendars, sacred temples, or something even more profound? What does it say about us that our ancestors felt such a powerful, universal urge to build in circles of stone? The heart of this global mystery lies in a simple yet profound definition. A stone circle is far more than a random assortment of boulders. It is a deliberate architectural statement, a ring or oval of upright megaliths placed with clear intention by prehistoric communities. These are not natural formations. The stones were chosen, sometimes moved over great distances, and set into the earth according to a conscious design. This intentionality is what separates a true monument from a field cleared by farmers or a jumble of rocks left by a glacier. From the simple, elegant rings found in remote landscapes to vast, complex structures with multiple concentric circles and central features like burial cairns or towering hailstones, each one represents a coordinated effort. Understanding this definition is our first key. It frames our entire investigation, allowing us to distinguish these sacred geometries from other ancient remnants. The very complexity of their construction whispers of a deep, sophisticated knowledge of the world, a unified vision that begins to reveal itself when we map their astonishing spread across the planet. This network of stone circles spans the globe with a startling consistency. Far beyond the familiar realms of Stonehenge in Britain, these monuments emerge from the landscapes of West Africa, where the Senegambian circles stand as silent sentinels. They appear in the Middle East at the sprawling, complex site known as Rujum el-Hiri. Further east, ancient rings of stone can be found in parts of India and the highlands of Ethiopia. This is not an isolated European tradition, but a worldwide architectural impulse. Seeing them plotted on a map transforms abstract ideas into a tangible, global tapestry. You see clusters and corridors, strings of sites that seem to trace forgotten pathways of humanity. This pattern presents us with a fundamental question. Did this idea spring up independently in different cultures, a shared response to universal human experiences like watching the sky, honoring ancestors, or marking the seasons? Or does this map reveal threads of connection, evidence of communication and exchange across distances we once thought impossible for ancient peoples? The stones do not record their journeys, but their placement hints at a story of migration, of knowledge passed along trade routes or carried with wandering tribes. To unravel the purpose behind these rings, we must first listen for the whispers of the shared human mind that built them, a mind looking up at the same stars and grappling with the same mysteries of existence. To grasp why these stones were raised, we must step into the world of the builders themselves, a world vastly different from our own. This was the Neolithic era, a pivotal chapter in human history where wandering gave way to rooting, where hunter-gatherers began to settle as farmers. This shift was monumental. For the first time, communities could produce a surplus of food, freeing some people from the daily struggle for sustenance. This new stability allowed for something unprecedented: the emergence of complex social organization and long-term, generational projects. These were not simple, scattered tribes, but societies capable of shared vision, with specialists who could plan, design, and coordinate the immense labor required to move mountains of stone. Their perception of reality was likely animistic. They did not see a world of inert objects, but a living, breathing landscape pulsating with spirit. A river was not just water flowing, it was a powerful entity. A great oak tree held its own wisdom, and the sky above was the most profound canvas of all, a vast, intelligent presence. The sun, moon, and stars were not distant balls of gas and rock. They were active, conscious forces governing life itself. The sun's journey across the sky dictated the seasons for planting and harvest. The moon's cycles measured time and influenced the rhythms of nature. This deep, intimate connection to the cosmos was not a belief system separate from daily life. It was the very fabric of existence. Building a stone circle, then, was far more than an engineering feat. It was a physical manifestation of their entire cosmology, a permanent interface between their community and the powers of the universe. These rings were sacred spaces constructed to interact with these forces, to seek their favor, to mark their movements, and to ensure the continuation of the cycles that sustained life. This profound desire to connect with the cosmos is etched into the very geometry of the monuments, most clearly in the precise alignments engineered into the stones, a silent language written in rock and sky. The sun's path was a primary text in their cosmic language, and they carved its most dramatic moments into the earth with stone. These alignments to the solstices represent a profound astronomical achievement. Picture the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. At a place like Stonehenge, the entire monument is oriented so that on that one specific morning, the sun rises directly over the unique heel stone, sending a shaft of light deep into the heart of the circle. This was not a one-time guess. It was the result of patient, meticulous observation, a science passed down through generations. They watched the sun's rising point shift along the horizon throughout the year, noting its northernmost and southernmost extremes. The solstices were these turning points, the absolute limits of the sun's journey. To capture this in architecture was to build a permanent, unerring clock and calendar. For an agricultural society, this knowledge was survival. The summer solstice might signal the beginning of the harvest, while the winter solstice marked the sun's symbolic rebirth, promising the return of longer days and the next planting season. These were not just practical dates on a farmer's almanac. They were moments of immense spiritual power, when the veil between the human world and the cosmic order was believed to be thinnest. The stone circle became the community's anchor point for this celestial event, a sacred theater where everyone could gather to witness the reaffirmation of their world's cycles. This deep, intentional connection to the sun is a thread you can trace across continents, from the British Isles to the Sahara Desert, where the ancient stones of Nabta Playa also frame the summer solstice sunrise. Yet the sun, for all its brilliance, was only half the story. A quieter, more rhythmic light also guided their lives and shaped their monuments. The moon's rhythmic dance across the night sky presented a far more complex challenge than the sun's steady annual journey. Its path is a long, slow wobble, a cycle that takes 18.6 years to complete. Over this great span, the points on the horizon where the moon rises and sets gradually shift north and south, reaching its own dramatic extremes known as the major and minor lunar standstills. At these moments, for a period of several years, the moon appears to pause at the very edge of its travels before beginning its long return. Encoding this subtle, long-term rhythm into architecture required a different order of observation altogether. It speaks to a tradition of knowledge so deep and stable that it could be preserved across generations. This was not casual sky watching. It was a sacred science maintained by dedicated individuals, perhaps the first astronomer priests, who held the responsibility of tracking this celestial clock through oral tradition and careful record-keeping. The stones at Callanish on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland stand as a powerful testament to this lunar focus. The entire layout of the circle, with its central monolith and avenues of standing stones, seems deliberately arranged to frame the southernmost rising of the moon during its major standstill, when it appears to skim dramatically along the horizon. For a coastal community, understanding the moon was directly tied to survival. Its phases governed the tides, dictating the safety of fishing expeditions and the harvest of shellfish. Its cycles also provided a more intricate calendar for timekeeping, marking months and seasons within the year, but its significance ran far deeper than the practical. Many cultures viewed specific lunar phases, particularly the full moon, as times of heightened spiritual energy. Rituals conducted under its light were believed to carry greater potency, connecting the community to the forces of growth, change, and the unseen world. The ability to not just observe but accurately predict these celestial events, to announce when the moon would reach its peak or begin its retreat, would have granted the builders and keepers of the circles an almost unimaginable authority. They became the interpreters of the cosmos itself, the bridge between the human and the divine. This celestial precision, tracking both the sun and the moon, points to a fundamental human need for order in a seemingly chaotic universe. These stone circles were humanity's first reliable, permanent calendars, massive stone mechanisms designed to lock the fleeting patterns of the sky into the unyielding permanence of the earth. Yet the story of these monuments extends beyond pure astronomy, into the very heart of human community and the immense effort required to build them. These stone calendars offered more than just dates. They created a sacred rhythm for human life. In a world before paper or digital alerts, the year was a fluid, intimidating expanse. The stones gave it structure. The summer solstice was not merely a long day. It was the official, community-witnessed signal to begin harvesting grains. The winter solstice was not just the shortest day. It was a collective sigh of relief, a celebration of the sun's promised return and the coming of a new cycle of growth. This celestial schedule dictated the most crucial moments for survival, transforming anxiety into anticipation and chaos into order. The calendar was embedded in the landscape itself, an unchangeable truth that everyone could see and understand. This shared timekeeping fostered a powerful social cohesion. It meant that distant communities, all watching the same sky and building similar monuments, were operating on the same fundamental schedule. Imagine the logistical advantage this provided for organizing large seasonal gatherings, for coordinating regional trade fairs when certain resources were available, or for planning ceremonies that united people from across a territory. The need for such a sophisticated communal calendar points directly to a society that had moved beyond mere day-to-day survival. It suggests scheduled rituals, planned agricultural work, and established times for social and economic exchange. The stone circle was the central hub for this scheduled life. It was the designated place where the community would congregate for these pivotal moments, transforming from a scattered population into a unified whole. The silent stones were the anchor, but the space within them pulsed with activity during these sacred times. This leads us to the profound social and spiritual role these circles played, far beyond their function as simple clocks. They were the beating heart of community identity. The stones themselves were only part of the monument, the silent stage for the vibrant human life that filled them. These circles were the ceremonial centers, the very heartbeat of community life. Picture the scene on a misty solstice morning. The central space, now so empty and still, would have been alive with activity. The scent of wood smoke from sacred fires would hang in the air, mingling with the rhythmic beat of drums and the low chant of voices raised in unison. Families gathered, sharing food from a communal feast, their breath visible in the chill. Elders would take their places of honor, their authority reinforced by presiding over these essential ceremonies. Young individuals might stand at the center, undergoing rites of passage that marked their transition into adulthood, their identities forever bound to this sacred place. Every gathering was a powerful reaffirmation of social bonds, a reminder that the community was stronger together than any individual alone. Even the monumental act of building the circle was itself a profound ritual. The process of quarrying, transporting, and raising the stones required the coordinated labor of hundreds, a shared endeavor that forged a powerful collective identity. It created a tangible link to the ancestors who first envisioned the project, and a legacy for the grandchildren who would complete it. The very shape of the circle, with no beginning and no end, was a universal symbol of eternity, unity, and the endless cycles of life and the natural world. This profound sense of shared purpose and identity, however, required an almost unimaginable practical effort. How did prehistoric communities, without draft animals or the wheel, move stones that weighed many tons and set them perfectly in place? Moving a 50-ton block of stone across miles of rugged terrain was a puzzle solved with simple, brilliant physics. The process likely began with teams positioning a sledge beneath the stone, its wooden runners smoothed for sliding. Then a forest of hands would lay down a track of greased log rollers in front of it. As the sledge inched forward, rollers from the back were constantly carried to the front, creating a continuous, moving road. This was a symphony of human coordination, with rhythmic chanting or drumbeats possibly setting the pace for teams hauling on immense ropes made of plant fibers or leather. Every person had a role, a precise movement repeated for days or weeks on end. This was not mindless dragging, it was a carefully choreographed operation, a testament to their understanding of friction and momentum. Once the colossal stone finally reached its destination, an even more delicate operation began, raising it to stand vertical against the sky. The most plausible method involved digging a deep, sloped pit. The stone would be nudged over this hole until it was perfectly balanced on the edge. Then, using wooden levers and frames for control, teams would slowly, incrementally, tip the monolith forward. As it fell, its base would slide down the earthen ramp, guided into the weighting socket where it was secured with packing stones. This final act of erection was the moment of truth, transforming a heavy object into a monument, a permanent marker in the landscape. The sheer scale of this labor is almost incomprehensible. It required a society stable enough to feed and organize hundreds of workers for months or even years. It demanded project managers, individuals who could visualize the final geometry and direct the entire operation from quarry to completion. This was Neolithic engineering at its most ambitious, a silent collaboration between human ingenuity and the raw materials of the earth. What is perhaps most mystifying is that this same core set of engineering principles appears in separate cultures across the globe. How did this shared technological knowledge emerge in lands separated by vast oceans and impassable mountains? This fundamental question has echoed through archaeology for generations. How could cultures separated by continents and oceans, with no apparent contact, all conceive of the same monumental architecture? The answer lies between two compelling theories. The first is independent invention, a process some researchers call convergent cultural evolution. This idea suggests that different human societies, when confronted with similar universal challenges and opportunities, can arrive at parallel solutions. Just as birds and bats independently evolved wings for flight, disparate cultures might have independently discovered the power and symbolism of the circle, applying it to their need to track the heavens and mark their place in the world. The human brain, with its inherent pattern-seeking nature, looks to the cyclical rhythms of life, the sun and the moon. It is perhaps not so surprising that many minds, gazing at the same celestial dance, would choose to build their answers in the same enduring shape. The alternative theory is cultural diffusion. This proposes that the knowledge of how and why to build these monuments originated from a single, innovative source culture. This revolutionary idea could then have traveled across vast distances, carried by migrating groups, exchanged along ancient trade routes, or shared by seafaring explorers who transmitted the concept from one coastal community to another. For a long time, this seemed improbable, a story of impossible journeys. But modern science is beginning to weigh in with fascinating clues. Recent genetic studies and the analysis of distinctive artifacts suggest that the initial wave of megalithic construction in Europe spread with remarkable speed. This rapid dissemination hints at a culture on the move, perhaps a maritime people who carried their architectural tradition with them as they traveled the coastlines. This is not just a dry academic debate. It strikes at the heart of how we understand human ingenuity. Are we witnessing the story of a single, connected prehistoric world, more interlinked than we ever suspected? Or are we seeing multiple, isolated cultures, each reaching their own brilliant, parallel conclusions about the universe? To move beyond theory, we can look at one of the most telling examples, the incredible stone circles of Senegambia. Long before the Great Pyramids pierced the Egyptian sky, another island culture was raising its own stone giants. On the sun-drenched islands of Malta, the temples of Haga Kim and Mnajdra stand as a testament to a forgotten architectural genius. These are not the simple rings we have come to know, but something far more complex, a series of interconnected, cloverleaf-shaped chambers all built from colossal blocks of local limestone. Their scale is humbling, with some stones weighing many tons, carefully fitted together without any metal tools. What is truly staggering is their age. These sprawling complexes were erected over 5,500 years ago, making them centuries older than Stonehenge and a millennium older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This incredible antiquity forces us to reconsider the entire timeline of monumental building. The sophistication on display here could not have been a first attempt. It hints at a long, lost history of development, a tradition of architectural and astronomical knowledge that had been refined over generations before these masterpieces were even conceived. The very design of these temples reveals a deep, intimate conversation with the cosmos. At Mnajdra, the lower temple is a precise astronomical instrument carved in stone. On the equinoxes, the first rays of the sun slice through the main doorway, illuminating a central slab inside the deepest chamber. During the solstices, the sun's light strikes the edges of massive stone doorways, marking the sun's extreme northern and southern limits with breathtaking accuracy. This was not a vague alignment, it was a meticulously engineered effect, a way of bringing the power and order of the heavens directly into the heart of their most sacred spaces. The fact that this occurs on a small, isolated island in the middle of the Mediterranean makes the mystery all the more profound. Were the builders of Malta a completely isolated people who independently discovered these principles of astronomy and massive construction? Or does their work reflect knowledge that was somehow shared across the ancient world, even at this incredibly early date? The temples stand in silent defiance, suggesting that the human desire to build permanent markers for the sky is far more ancient and deeply rooted than we ever realized. This same powerful impulse would eventually find its way across an entire ocean, manifesting in a completely different form on the shores of the Americas. Across the Atlantic, the same ancient language of stone and sky was being spoken. In North America, from the wooded hills of New England to the vast high plains of Wyoming, indigenous peoples constructed their own ceremonial landscapes. The Mystery Hill complex in New Hampshire, often called America's Stonehenge, features a network of stone chambers and aligned monoliths. Far to the west, the Bighorn Medicine Wheel rests on a remote mountain plateau, a perfect circle of stones with spokes radiating from a central cairn. This beautiful, stark structure is a map of the heavens etched into the earth. Its alignments point precisely to the summer solstice sunrise and to the rising positions of key stars like Sirius and Aldebaran. For the Native American tribes connected to these places, they were and remain living sacred spaces. They are not relics of a dead past but active parts of spiritual practice, woven into oral histories that tie the people directly to the land and the cosmos. These sites are a powerful testament. They prove that the profound human need to build sacred, astronomically aligned monuments is a universal impulse, one that could and did arise independently across the globe, wherever people looked up at the stars and wondered. This recurring pattern of independent invention challenges a long-held and deeply controversial idea: the theory of a single, lost master civilization. This scientific discipline, known as archaeoastronomy, bridges the gap between the stones and the stars. It is the dedicated study of how ancient cultures perceived the sky and wove that cosmic understanding directly into their daily lives and sacred structures. Researchers in this field are not merely stargazers, they are scientific detectives. They use high-precision surveying equipment and sophisticated computer software to recreate the ancient skyscape, peeling back millennia of celestial procession to see the heavens exactly as the builders saw them. This process transforms speculation into evidence. When a computer model confirms that a specific alignment between two stones frames the winter solstice sunset, and that this alignment is too precise to be accidental, we move from guessing to knowing. This rigorous methodology has been crucial for validating the astronomical purpose of sites from Callanish in Scotland to the intricate sun daggers of Choco Canyon in North America. Yet this science carries an important warning against a practice sometimes called astroarchaeology, where enthusiastic researchers might project modern star charts onto ancient sites, seeing constellations and planetary movements that held no meaning for the original culture. The true challenge lies in discerning a statistically significant pattern from simple coincidence. An alignment must be precise, it must be repeatable across multiple sites within a culture, and most importantly, it must be interpreted within the full archaeological context, including artifacts, settlement patterns, and what we know of the people's broader worldview. This careful, evidence-based approach allows us to separate the genuine celestial language of the stones from the whispers of our own imaginations, grounding one of history's greatest mysteries in verifiable fact. Another layer of mystery cloaks these ancient sites, one that speaks to a different kind of connection altogether. The Ley Line Hypothesis suggests that stone circles are not isolated monuments but powerful nodes on a vast, invisible grid of Earth energy. According to this compelling idea, straight alignments can be drawn across the landscape, connecting stone circles, burial mounds, and old churches built on even older sacred ground. These lines are often described as channels for a mysterious, telluric force, with the stone circles acting as amplifiers or concentrators of this power. It is a vision of the planet as a living being, crisscrossed by energetic meridians that our ancestors could somehow perceive and mark. For mainstream science, however, this remains a beautiful but unsubstantiated story. When statisticians analyze these alignments, they find that given the immense number of ancient sites dotting regions like Britain, it is statistically almost inevitable that many will fall into straight lines purely by random chance. There is also no reproducible scientific instrument that has ever detected the kind of energy these lines are said to carry. The theory persists not because of physical proof, but because of a powerful psychological need. We are pattern-seeking creatures, hardwired to find meaning and connection in our surroundings. The idea of a hidden web linking sacred places makes the world feel more intentional, more magical, and more deeply interconnected. So while the energetic grid may be a myth born of our longing for order, the cultural network it represents was profoundly real. These sites were connected not by lines of force, but by the movement of people, the exchange of ideas, and a shared human impulse to build meaning into the earth itself. The stones themselves are not the only messengers from this distant age. Etched into their surfaces and scattered across the surrounding landscapes, we find a silent, symbolic language. Spirals that seem to swirl into infinity, intricate patterns of concentric circles known as cup and ring marks, and sharp, zigzagging lines appear on monuments from the wild coasts of Ireland to the sun-baked plains of Portugal. The specific stories these symbols tell are forever lost to us, their original names and meanings faded by thousands of years, yet their sheer geographic spread is a powerful clue in itself. This was not a local dialect of art, it was a widespread symbolic vocabulary. The recurring spiral might have charted the journey of the soul or the cyclical nature of the seasons. The cup and ring marks could have mapped the stars or represented portals to other realms. These shared motifs strongly suggest a network of shared beliefs, a common understanding of the cosmos and the spirit world that flowed across the continent. This artistic connection implies that ideas traveled just as surely as people did. A trader from the Mediterranean carrying distinctive shells might have shared a tale of a sky god whose symbol was a radiating circle. A family group migrating northward could have carried the knowledge of how to properly mark a sacred burial with a specific spiral pattern. This was a thin but very real cultural web, connecting disparate communities through a common visual language. The exchange of such profound concepts required methods of communication we can only begin to reconstruct. Without a written word, this knowledge was passed through oral tradition, through ritual performance, and through the patient, deliberate act of carving meaning into stone for future generations to witness and understand. The silent stones could not speak, but the people who raised them certainly did. In a world without written records, the survival of knowledge depended entirely on the human voice and a perfectly trained memory. Complex astronomical cycles, precise engineering methods, and the very meaning of the symbols carved into the rock were all preserved through an unbroken chain of oral tradition. This was not casual storytelling, it was a rigorous discipline. Specific individuals, perhaps elders or a dedicated priestly class, would have committed immense volumes of information to memory, passing it down through generations using songs, chants, and rhythmic poetry as mnemonic devices. The proof that such a system could achieve astonishing accuracy is written across the Pacific Ocean. The Polynesian voyagers, using only their knowledge of star paths, wave patterns, and bird migrations, successfully navigated the world's largest ocean to discover and settle remote islands. They carried a complete map of the heavens in their minds, a living library of celestial knowledge transmitted by voice alone. This demonstrates that the Neolithic builders were fully capable of preserving and transmitting the sophisticated data needed to align their monuments with the sun and moon over centuries. But how did this knowledge travel between continents? The most compelling answer may lie not on the land but on the sea. Look at a map of Europe's ancient monuments. A striking pattern emerges, with remarkably similar stone tombs and circles appearing all along the Atlantic coastline, from Portugal and Spain, up through Brittany in France, and across to Britain, Ireland, and Scandinavia. This is not a random scattering, it traces a maritime highway. Coastal communities were never truly isolated, they were connected by the water. The development of seaworthy boats capable of both coastal hopping and open water voyages created a network far faster and more efficient than any overland route through dense, uncharted forests. These vessels carried more than just precious stones, tools, and amber. They carried people, and people carried ideas. A ship landing on a foreign shore would have been a major event, with sailors sharing stories of their homeland, describing the great stone circles they had seen, and perhaps even sharing the sacred chants that explained their purpose. The most valuable cargo was always knowledge, a shared vision of how to build a connection to the cosmos. This exchanged wisdom was often encoded in a universal language that transcended spoken words, the silent, perfect logic of sacred geometry. The perfect circle is a shape that nature rarely produces on its own. To construct one requires not just effort, but a leap of abstract thought. For the Neolithic builders, this was an act of high philosophy made physical. Using nothing more than a central peg and a length of rope, they could inscribe a flawless ring upon the land, a geometric ideal pulled from the mind and imposed upon the chaos of the natural world. This simple tool, a rope, became their compass, their protractor, and their ruler. By fixing one end and walking the perimeter, they could lay out the entire monument, marking the positions for dozens of stones with astonishing accuracy. Some circles are not even perfect but deliberately egg-shaped, a design that demands an even more sophisticated understanding of geometry, using two central points and two different rope lengths to create a complex dynamic form. This was not crude guesswork, it was applied mathematics. The very act of construction encoded a silent knowledge of pi, the fundamental ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. They may not have calculated it to 100 decimal places, but they understood its practical reality every time they stretched a rope from a central point. This mathematical precision hints at something even more revolutionary: the possible use of a standardized unit of measurement. Some researchers have proposed the existence of a megalithic yard, a unit of roughly 2.72 feet, which appears and reappears in the dimensions of circles from northern Scotland to the heart of England. If true, this suggests a shared system of measurement, a common technical language that allowed different communities to build to the same grand scale. It completely shatters the old-fashioned image of primitive, grunting cavemen. These were geometers, engineers, and astronomers whose intellectual achievements were literally set in stone. The circle they chose was itself a universe of meaning. It has no beginning and no end, symbolizing eternity and the endless cycles of the seasons, the moon, and life itself. It represents unity, a community gathered with no one person at the head, and it mirrors the horizon, that sacred meeting line between the earth we walk on and the celestial dome above. This profound geometry provided the foundational blueprint for the entire monument, but the most dramatic features were the massive, individual stones placed with even greater intention. Within the perfect geometry of the circle, certain stones held a singular, dramatic purpose. At Stonehenge, the solitary heel stone stands apart from the main ring, a silent sentinel positioned with breathtaking precision. On the summer solstice, an observer standing at the center of the monument would witness the sun's first fiery sliver cresting directly over its weathered top. This was no accident of placement. The heel stone functioned as a permanent foresight, a fixed gun sight on the horizon that transformed the entire circle into a colossal celestial observatory. It locked the most important day of the year into the landscape, an event witnessed by the entire community. Yet the focus of such ceremonies often lay at the very heart of the circle itself. Many sites feature a large, flat slab known traditionally as an altar stone, or a central mound of stones called a cairn. The true use of these features remains one of archaeology's most tantalizing puzzles. Were they simple ceremonial tables, or did they serve a more profound function? It is plausible that these central points were used for ceremonial offerings. A community might place a portion of their harvested grain upon the stone, a symbolic gift of gratitude to the powers that ensured their survival. In other instances, the offering could have been an animal, its life given in a ritual that reaffirmed the cycle of life and death essential to their world. Some researchers suggest these acts were meant to appease powerful deities or to honor the ancestors whose spirits were believed to remain closely connected to the living. This deep veneration for those who came before shaped the very social structure of the space. It is easy to envision a clear hierarchy during these sacred gatherings. A small, knowledgeable group, perhaps an elder or a spiritual leader, would have presided from the central area, performing the essential rites upon the altar stone. The wider community would have gathered outside the main ring of stones, participants in the ceremony but separated from its core mystery. This physical separation reinforced a social order, creating a sacred gradient from the profane outer world to the supremely holy center. The specific practices undoubtedly varied from the lochs of Scotland to the plains of Senegal, but the underlying principle was universal. The stone circle was not a museum or a passive calendar. It was a living, breathing ritual space, a theater where the community's relationship with the cosmos, the land, and its own ancestors was actively negotiated and renewed with every passing season. The stones were not raised only for the living. Many of these monuments were built as gateways to the world of the ancestors. We find them intimately connected with the final resting places of the community, with chambered tombs, burial cairns, and pits for cremation remains frequently nestled within the circle or positioned just outside its boundary. This was a deliberate choice, placing the ceremonial space within a landscape of the dead. The living came to these rings to commune with those who came before, to feel their presence and seek their wisdom. The towering stones themselves, enduring through generations, may have been seen as eternal representations of these ancestors, indestructible pillars that bridged the gap between the visible world and the spirit realm. When the community gathered for a solstice sunrise or a lunar standstill, the ceremony was about more than marking time. It was an active act of remembrance and honor. They were calling upon their ancestors, seeking guidance for the coming season, and ensuring the continued favor of those whose legacy they carried forward. The monument was a permanent home for these spirits, anchoring them to a specific, sacred place in the physical world. This profound connection to lineage and land was not just a spiritual matter, it was the very foundation of social power. The authority to speak for the ancestors, to interpret their will from the alignment of a stone or the path of a star, would have granted immense influence to those who held it. This social structure, built on knowledge and ritual, created a new kind of authority. The individuals who could predict the sun's rebirth or the moon's standstill held the community's future in their hands. This was not merely a respected role, it was a form of profound, almost magical power. By controlling the calendar, this emerging elite class directly controlled the agricultural cycle. They decided when to plant and when to harvest, making them the ultimate managers of the food supply. For a society that lived one bad season away from hardship, the ability to accurately forecast these cycles was the difference between prosperity and disaster. This knowledge became their mandate to rule, a divine right granted by the cosmos itself. The very act of building the monument cemented this new hierarchy. Organizing hundreds of people to haul 50-ton stones required a clear chain of command. There were visionaries who designed the geometry, engineers who directed the transport, and overseers who managed the labor crews and food supplies. This was not an egalitarian project. It created a clear distinction between those who gave the orders and those who carried them out. The finished stone circle stood as a permanent, undeniable symbol of this social contract. The ruling class provided cosmic order and communal identity, and in return, the people provided their labor and allegiance. This dynamic was not static. Over centuries, as societies grew more complex, the nature of this power evolved. At some sites, what began as a communal ceremonial space was later enclosed or modified, its access restricted, signaling a shift from inclusive ritual to exclusive control. The stones themselves tell this story of a social revolution, marking the moment when humanity began its long, complicated journey from tribal equality to structured, hierarchical power. The stones did not fall silent with the passing of their builders. For thousands of years after the last monolith was set in place, these ancient rings continued to exert a powerful pull on the human imagination. Long after the original ceremonies faded from memory, new generations arrived drawn to the same hallowed ground, and they wove their own stories into the weathered rock. In the British Isles, Bronze Age communities began to use the circles as sacred burial grounds. They interred their honored dead in and around the perimeter, often placing cremated remains in pottery vessels beneath small, round mounds. This was not an act of desecration, but one of profound respect. They were consciously linking their own lineage to the power of this ancient place, adding a new chapter to its story and claiming its enduring sanctity for their ancestors. This pattern of reverence continued through the Iron Age and even into the Roman era. Local populations, now living in a completely different world, still gathered at these sites. Coins and pottery fragments from these later periods found at circles like Avebury suggest they remained vital community focal points, perhaps for markets, festivals, or political meetings, their original astronomical function replaced by an enduring role as a central landmark. When Christianity spread across the landscape, the Church faced a fascinating dilemma. These pagan monuments were too powerful, too deeply rooted in the local consciousness to simply destroy. So a new strategy emerged, one of absorption. Churches were sometimes built in clear sight of the circles, physically and symbolically capturing the old sacred space within a new spiritual framework. The old gods were banished and new myths were born. Medieval chroniclers recast the stones as the work of giants or as a petrified army, while other tales labeled them as the devil's own work, a dangerous dance frozen in stone. This continuous reinterpretation, spanning from the Bronze Age to the medieval period, tells us one crucial thing. The specific rituals may have been forgotten, but the deep, intuitive sense that these were places of immense power never truly faded. They retained a magnetic significance for millennia, a testament to their timeless hold on the human spirit. Today, that long, unbroken thread of reverence faces its most severe test from entirely new kinds of pressures. The very footsteps of millions of admirers now pose a silent threat to the monuments they have come to witness. This immense popularity, a testament to our enduring fascination, creates a paradox of preservation. The simple act of walking compacts the soil around the stones, damaging fragile root systems and accelerating erosion with every season. Even a gentle, well-intentioned touch leaves an invisible mark. The natural oils and acids on human skin slowly accumulate on the stone surfaces, degrading the rock and obscuring the ancient carvings over decades. These are not acts of malice, but the cumulative effect of love and curiosity, a slow wearing away that challenges those tasked with safeguarding our shared heritage. Compounding this is the broader challenge of a changing climate. Increased rainfall can destabilize the earth, holding the massive stones upright, while more frequent cycles of freezing and thawing work like tiny wedges in existing cracks. The preservation of these sites has become a careful dance, a constant effort to balance public access with the solemn duty to protect them for the generations yet to come. To achieve this, conservators employ thoughtful strategies. They install clearly marked pathways that guide visitor flow and protect the most fragile areas of the landscape. Visitor centers are often built at a distance from the monuments themselves, offering immersive educational experiences that satisfy curiosity without adding to the physical strain on the ancient stones. Perhaps one of the most powerful new tools is digital preservation. Through high-resolution laser scanning and sophisticated three-dimensional modeling, we can now create perfect digital twins of these sites. These virtual records are invaluable, providing a permanent baseline to monitor even the subtlest changes to the stones and offering a way for everyone to explore these places without leaving a physical trace. This global responsibility to protect our prehistoric legacy is now being met with an equally powerful set of tools for discovery, opening new windows into the ancient mind without ever touching a stone. These silent stones are now beginning to speak through a new kind of vision. Modern archaeology is no longer solely about trowels and brushes. It has embraced the power of non-invasive technologies that let us see straight through the earth. From high above the forest canopy, a technology known as LIDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, is rewriting our maps, An aircraft equipped with a laser scanner flies over a landscape, and its millions of pulsed beams penetrate the dense leaves, creating an incredibly detailed three-dimensional model of the ground surface itself. In places like the thick woodlands of Britain or the remote jungles of Central America, LIDAR has revealed a hidden world. It shows the ghostly outlines of vast earthworks and perfectly circular ditches that have been completely invisible to the naked eye for centuries, monuments that were simply swallowed by time and forest. This is how we discover that the lone, familiar stone circle standing in a field was likely never alone, but was part of a much larger, more complex ceremonial landscape. While LIDAR maps the surface, another tool peers deep into the ground. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, works like a sophisticated echolocator. It sends radar pulses into the soil, and by reading the signals that bounce back, it can create a sonogram of the subsurface. This allows researchers to see the footprints of history without ever breaking the ground. They can identify the dark impressions left by long, rotted wooden posts, the outlines of ritual pits filled with offerings, and even the foundational sockets of stones that were pulled down and buried ages ago. Entire destroyed monuments, completely erased from view, are being digitally resurrected. This flood of new data is fundamentally reshaping a long-standing and often controversial narrative about our prehistoric past. For generations, theories about these sites were built on the small fraction of evidence that survived above ground. Now, we are seeing the true scale of the network, and it is exponentially larger and more interconnected than anyone suspected. This is not just about finding new circles, it is about gathering the hard evidence to finally test old ideas. Did these sites function as part of a unified system? Were they connected by processional avenues we can no longer see? The data from these tools provides the concrete proof to move beyond speculation, generating new, more accurate theories about the sheer ambition and organizational genius of the people who shaped these ancient landscapes. Every new scan brings us closer to seeing their world through their eyes, revealing a civilization far more sophisticated than we ever gave them credit for. The human genius behind these monuments is so profound that it has sometimes been dismissed as the work of otherworldly forces. A persistent and popular narrative suggests that only visitors from the stars or a single, technologically superior lost civilization could have engineered such marvels. These stories are compelling, but they are built on a fundamental misunderstanding of our own history. The central fallacy is the assumption that prehistoric people were simply not capable of such intellectual and physical achievements. This idea crumbles under the weight of modern evidence. We now understand that Neolithic societies were not primitive in the sense of being unintelligent or unskilled. They were experts in their environment, masterful engineers who understood leverage, friction, and geometry, and patient astronomers who tracked celestial cycles across generations. Their collaborative spirit and deep cultural knowledge were technologies in their own right, powerful enough to reshape the landscape. To attribute their work to aliens or a mythical superculture is to strip them of their rightful legacy. It dismisses the immense collective effort, the generations of labor, and the sophisticated local knowledge that these projects represent. The true wonder is not that someone else did it, but that humanity itself accomplished these feats with nothing more than stone, wood, and shared purpose. The real story is one of human potential realized through patience, observation, and an unbreakable bond with the cosmos. As we stand amid these silent circles today, we are not visiting the relics of a forgotten alien race. We are walking in the footsteps of our own ancestors, connecting with a past that proves what people can achieve when they work together toward a common, celestial goal. So much has been uncovered, and yet the greatest discoveries may still lie ahead, waiting for the next generation to listen to what the stones have yet to say. Even with all our discoveries, the stones guard their most intimate secrets. We can map the alignments and calculate the engineering, but the living breath of the ceremony is gone. What specific words were spoken when the solstice sun first struck the altar stone? What sacred substances were used, and what precise promises were made to the ancestors or the gods? These are the whispers that fade fastest, the human details lost to time. The sheer longevity of their astronomical knowledge presents another profound puzzle. How did a society without writing first recognize the moon's subtle 18.6-year cycle? The discovery itself would have required dedicated observation across multiple human lifetimes, a chain of watchkeepers patiently noting the moon's slow dance. The transmission of that knowledge from elder to apprentice, generation after generation, represents a triumph of oral tradition we can scarcely comprehend today. And the map is surely incomplete. Could vast, unknown circles remain hidden beneath the dense canopy of the Amazon rainforest or buried by desert sands? As ancient coastlines sank at the end of the last ice age, did rising seas swallow the earliest rings of stone, leaving their foundations waiting on the seabed? The search is turning to these frontier spaces, armed with new tools. Future excavations will employ techniques fine enough to detect microscopic residues on stone surfaces, perhaps identifying traces of ceremonial foods, rare plant oils, or sacrificial materials that have been invisible until now. In the field of archaeoastronomy, more powerful computer modeling will help distinguish genuine, culturally significant alignments from random patterns, refining our understanding of which celestial events truly mattered. The most promising path forward is not a single discipline but a conversation. Archaeologists are now partnering with geneticists to trace the movement of the people who built these sites. Climatologists are reconstructing the ancient environments to understand the challenges they faced. Perhaps most importantly, there is a growing respect for the enduring knowledge held by indigenous communities, whose oral histories and cultural practices often preserve echoes of this deep past. This collaborative spirit is piecing together a far more holistic picture. The Great Stone Circle puzzle is not a finished image, but a living mystery. Our ongoing search to understand them does more than illuminate the past. It connects us to the very same human drive that raised the stones, the timeless quest to find our place in the vast, beautiful order of the cosmos. In our own age of instant information and artificial light, these silent rings of stone hold a gravity that defies easy explanation. They pull us across centuries not as ruins, but as anchors to a fundamental human experience we have nearly forgotten. We are surrounded by the noise of our own making, by cities that never sleep and screens that fill our vision. The stone circles offer a profound silence, a space where the only things speaking are the wind, the stones, and the slow turn of the planet. They connect us to the very roots of settled human life, to a moment when our ancestors first paused their wandering, looked at a piece of land, and decided to build something permanent that spoke to the stars. This was the birth of a new kind of thinking, a shift from simply surviving to actively seeking meaning. These monuments are the physical evidence of that first great leap. They are testaments to human cooperation on a staggering scale, to an intellectual curiosity that patiently mapped the heavens, and to a spiritual yearning to understand our role in a vast, mysterious cosmos. Standing before them, we are stripped of our modern arrogance. We feel a quiet awe, a humbling sense of our own brief moment in a story that stretches back thousands of years. This is not just British history or African history. It is our shared human heritage, a silent language carved from the earth itself, and we are only just beginning to understand its grammar. This shared legacy of stone circles reminds us that our deepest questions have always transcended time and culture. We have walked together from the solstice sunrise at Stonehenge to the moonlit rituals of Callanish, and across the ocean to the sacred medicine wheels of the Great Plains. We have witnessed how these monuments were far more than simple clocks. They were the beating heart of community, the anchors of social order, and the physical expression of a yearning to connect with the cosmos. The true story here is not one of isolated genius, but of a shared human impulse. Different cultures gazing at the same sky and grappling with the same cycles of life, independently arrived at a similar, profound solution, building their understanding into the very earth. While many mysteries linger, each new technological discovery and every reinterpretation of an ancient alignment brings us into a closer, more respectful conversation with our ancestors. So the next time you encounter an image of these weathered stones, see them not as ruins, but as the first chapters of our collective story. They are humanity's earliest and most enduring attempt to carve meaning into the landscape, to build a dialogue with the universe that continues to this day. We would love to hear which of these ancient sites speaks most deeply to you. Share your thoughts in the comments and join us as we continue to explore the profound echoes of our shared past.